just want to add a few more van reflections. I think for me, the lesson right now is a lot about learning to be flexible with a strong foundation. Like previously, I felt like my sense of safety, my sense of like having a secure, solid foundation was really dependent upon rigidity. It was dependent upon my ability to have total control over my space, total control over my time. I mean, I was like an isolationist a lot when I lived in Omaha in that house for so long. I became really codependent in like all of the romantic relationships that I had during that time period because of that, I think, because of that like sense of rigidity of needing my external environment, including the people who were in my external environment, to always be the same, needing to keep that all the same. You know, talking about those roots that go down really deep into a narrow plot of land, it was like that. That was the way that I was gaining a sense of safety and security and an understanding of who I was through really deeply rooting into that narrow little patch of whatever narrow patch of an environment that was all about very clear roles, you know, being a social worker as my primary identity, having this house that I lived in, having pets and somebody who lived with me, this very kind of like cookie cutter American dream version of stability. But it all meant that I had to really be dependent upon those things. I think that's where a lot of my codependency and my previous relationships spurred from as well. It was like I had a dependence on being able to plug into that same specific tiny little plot of earth. I needed the environment to look the same. I didn't know how to, you know, extend my route over a few feet or a few miles and be able to get my needs and resources fulfilled that way. It kept me really small because I was using this really small, rigid environment to make myself feel okay. And it didn't really even work to begin with. It was just, I think, the illusion of what society had made me think was going to keep me safe, made me think was going to keep me secure, made me think was going to like lead me to the life that I wanted. But it actually just ended up like restricting me and keeping me stuck and inflexible. Because to change that, to break my routine, to be spontaneous, I had such a hard time being spontaneous in that old reality. To do any of those things meant that I was like threatening the rigidity of the routine, threatening the rigidity of the patch of land that I was clinging onto that made me feel like I was going to be okay. So I feel like the lesson that I'm learning now at this point is, what does it look like to build a strong foundation that is flexible, that is not rigidly dependent on the external environment being a certain way or doing the same thing every day in order to feel safe and secure. And that to me is like what the redwoods and sequoias speak to, is having that really strong foundation, but it's still flexible in that I know how to get my needs met from resources that exist over here, and I know how to get my needs met from resources that exist over here, which means that I can be here and have my needs met, I can be here and have my needs met, maybe I can be here and still have my needs met. It allows for more flexibility. It allows for more growth. And I think that's what, I'm really feeling and experiencing right now in this iteration. It does feel like stretching, and it does feel like expanding beyond my comfort zone right now to be leaving this place where I had started to grow my roots down deep and create my reality in that tiny little pocket of land again. And so I feel like this trip, this journey, this mission of not getting too attached to one specific version of my life is what will allow me to be flexible, is what will allow me to be able to continue to grow and have new experiences and be spontaneous and keep pushing those comfort zone edges for myself, keep expanding what that means to me, keep finding new ways of getting my needs met from the resources that exist up here and my needs met from resources that exist over here and all the way up there and way back there. You know, it allows me to be a much more free, liberated being when I'm not depending on a rigid small container. When we can diversify the ways that we feed ourselves, and specifically in the things that bring us that feeling of like safety, security, a foundation of who we are, to be able to stand strong within that. When we can diversify the resources that help us feel groundedness in our foundation, that help us feel grounded in that foundation, that help us feel strong and bold and well-resourced. When we can diversify the nutrients that support us, it allows us to be more flexible. It allows us to be less rigid. It allows us to grow beyond a tiny container that would otherwise keep us capped at a certain point, because we can't grow beyond that specific rigid container. I've talked about the bonsai tree example before. That's a really powerful analogy in a lot of areas, but I'm thinking of it here because it is like you plant a bonsai tree in a pot, and you have a little tiny mini tree that you can use as like a house plant basically. But then if you move that bonsai tree and plant it in a forest where it has room for its roots to spread out and grow, it'll grow huge. It will be, like one of the biggest trees in that area. It's sort of parallel thinking to that, of what are the ways that we create containers that give us the illusion of safety, but are actually keeping us stuck and trapped. And that feels like the world that I came from, was like clinging to my tiny container out of an illusion that was what was keeping me secure and safe and contained, and out of an illusion that was where I had to be in order to get my resources met. And then, like leaving Omaha and going on this travel adventure, and the journey and pathway that I'm continuing to follow is just smashing out of that, smashing the pot, and, extending my roots into earth, into ground, into new environments. It's allowing me to grow bigger. It's allowing me to resource myself differently. And there's definitely growing pains. I've shared a lot of that with y'all on the way here, but it's also starting to feel really fun and expansive. And I'm starting to see how this is exactly what's happening. I'm starting to see how some of my needs are being met through my California connections, and some of my needs are being met through my Nebraska connections, and some of my needs are being met through my new Kansas connections. And I'm seeing this like coming together of all of these resources streaming into me, giving me that sense of foundation, giving me that sense of security. So it doesn't matter then where I'm at. I have so much more freedom and liberation in how I structure my days, and how I choose to move about my world, and how I can be spontaneous and decide to, like open myself up to other people, or take a trip that I feel like I want to take. And all the while I can be held beyond the confines of my previous tiny little bonsai tree pot. I can be held after stretching my roots and busting out of that pot. I can still be held and still have a sense of security, and still have a sense of a strong foundation, and still have a sense of like I have something to fall back on, even though it looks completely different than it once did for me. And that's just, it's feeling really good. It's feeling really good because it allows my expansion. I have always felt capped in expansion. I've always felt capped in not wanting to shine my light to its fullest extent, because it didn't fit the previous containers that I was keeping myself in. The containers I was in were too small for the expression that wanted to come through me. And goodness, I have been through so fucking much to get to this place right here where I'm at. And I'm celebrating. I'm really fucking proud of myself, and I'm celebrating that I'm feeling the fruits of those labors. Like busting out of that bonsai tree pot was like so painful. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. There were so many layers of breaking out of that. It meant letting go of like everything I had crafted my entire reality around. It meant like reconfiguring my whole vision of like who I was, and what I'm here for, and what I really want and what I don't want. It was like truly excruciatingly painful. I don't ever want to go through that again. I'm not trying to scare y'all, but it was like really hard for me because I was like really, really, really deeply rooted. So it was, but I feel now the sense of being past the stage of busting out of the old reality into now. And now I'm at the stage of like feeling into the expansion that's available to me. I'm not saying there's like no pain or grief that I'm still processing. Absolutely there is. I think those are cyclical processes that go on for a really long time. Like absolutely still processing grief, pain, figuring out who I am and all those pieces. But I do feel a really solid shift between being in a place of like really focusing on the letting go and the crumbling apart and like the busting out of that bonsai tree pot and all those pieces. Like I'm moving from a focus. I can feel myself moving from that kind of being consuming in my reality into that the potentiality, the possibility, the other side of what it means to have busted out of this previous restricted reality that I had found myself in, that I had created for myself unknowingly. So this where I'm at right now, like this is a fun place to play. This is a fun place to explore. And I'm not saying it's not still scary, because it is a little still scary, but it's so different. It feels so different to me. It really feels like I'm at that place of like, oh, feeling my roots stretch out, feeling myself be able to stretch beyond the limits that I had arbitrarily kept myself so small within. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm intrigued. I'm interested to see where things keep going as I keep following this path and continue to bring in more and more nutrients and resources to feed me and feed my soul and feed my spirit and feed my sense of having a secure, solid grounding and foundation in who I am, that's not dependent on any one person or any one place or any one thing or any one routine. Diversifying my resources and my networks so that I can grow, so that I can grow. So I can be like the bonsai tree, so I can be like the sequoia, so I can be like the redwoods, and pull all that into me and use it to just expand in the ways that my soul and spirit are calling me to expand. So it's an exciting time, y'all. I'm really glad to be through the packing and cleaning and planning stage and actually be like in the beginning rolling days of this next travel adventure chapter. So for all of you, if you're relating to this message, if you're feeling like you're trapped in a little bonsai tree pot and needing to start breaking out of that, it is a really great time to start doing some of that work. Doesn't have to be big stuff. I am a strong advocate of baby steps. I took a lot of baby steps before I made some of the bigger busting out moves that I've been talking about. So go slow with yourself, but listen to yourself. Baby steps, but don't ignore the callings. Like listen to the callings of your soul, listen to the callings of your spirit. If you're feeling confined, if you're feeling trapped, if you're feeling like your environment is keeping you from being able to shine or expand or grow as much as you want to, as much as you know that you can, don't lose sight of that. Don't let that feeling suffocate within you. Keep that front and center. Even if you can't act on that right now, hold it within you. Hold it in your heart, hold it in your spirit. Keep it as a North Star, a guiding force moving forward. Take those small baby steps when you can. Like, we are here to shine our whole light. We are here in this life to be able to be who we are. Our society doesn't make that very easy for us, but we can still make choices to be able to do that for ourselves. And I don't think there's ever been a better time to do this, because there are so many other people who are stepping up and stepping into authenticity and expansion and growth and healing. Like there's so much momentum for that happening in this culture right now. And really, I think it's a global thing as well. So if you are feeling called to jump on the train of expansion, growth, letting the fullness of your light shine through, do it. Let's do it. What are some baby steps you can take? What are some ways you can get your resources and your nutrients from somewhere beyond your comfort zone? How can you start stretching your roots a little bit more outside of the container that you're currently within? Sometimes it just starts with asking those questions and then listening to the answers, even again, if it's not something we can act on right now. All right, with that, I'm sending y'all so much love and looking forward to seeing you next time.